3 weeks after Emma Walker became an honorary member of the Hells Angels, rain tapped against her bedroom window as she carefully sketched baby Robbie's face in her drawing book. The leather vest Buck had given her hung on her closet door, its protected friend patch catching the soft lamplight. Emma's life had changed in ways she never could have imagined. Kids who once whispered about her trash clothes now saved her a seat at lunch. Brittany, the former queen bee who had tormented Emma for years, now smiled nervously whenever they passed in the hallways. But amid this newfound respect, Emma sensed something wasn't right. The man who tried to kidnap Robbie had been released on bail yesterday, and the news had spread through town like wildfire. Emma's phone buzzed with a text from Diane. "Meeting tonight. Buck says it's important you come." She set down her pencil and looked at her drawing of Robbie. His chubby cheeks and big blue eyes were just right, but something about the shadows in the picture made him look worried, not happy like she had planned. Emma shook her head. Even her drawings seemed to know something bad was coming. Outside, the evening sky turned dark purple as the rain fell harder. Emma's mom was working late again, trying to catch up on bills that never seemed to end. The kitchen clock read 6:30 p.m. Soon, one of Buck's friends would come to drive Emma to the clubhouse. The Hells Angels never let her walk alone after dark anymore. Emma changed into dry jeans and her warmest sweater. She carefully slipped on her leather vest over the top. The vest still felt special, like wearing a shield that kept bad things away. She ran her fingers over the protected friend patch on the back, remembering how it felt when Buck had placed it on her shoulders in front of hundreds of bikers. In the bathroom mirror, Emma noticed how different she looked now. She didn't hide behind her long brown hair anymore. Her eyes looked right back at herself, strong and sure. She wasn't the same scared girl who used to hunch over her lunch alone. She had stood up to a kidnapper. She had saved baby Robbie. She had earned the respect of the toughest people in town. The rumble of a motorcycle engine cut through the sound of rain. Emma grabbed her backpack with her drawing book inside and wrote a quick note for her mom. "At the clubhouse with Diane and Buck. We'll be home by 9. Love you." When she opened the front door, she saw Diane's husband Ray sitting on his big black motorcycle at the curb. His beard was shorter than Buck's, and his eyes were always kind behind his tough face. He handed Emma a helmet, just like he did every time he picked her up. "Everything okay, Ray?" Emma asked as she climbed on the back of the motorcycle. Ray's shoulders were tight under his wet leather jacket. "Buck will explain," was all he said. The ride to the clubhouse took only 10 minutes, but the cold rain made it feel longer. Emma held tight to Ray's jacket, watching the town blur past through raindrops on her helmet visor. They passed Mr. Mike's Market, where everything had started that day when Emma held baby Robbie. The store's bright yellow sign glowed in the gray evening, and Emma remembered how scared she had been when the man tried to take Robbie away. When they arrived at the clubhouse, the parking lot was full of motorcycles, more than Emma had seen since the night she was given her vest. Water pooled around the bike tires and reflected the building's lights like tiny stars on the black pavement. Something big was happening. Inside, the clubhouse smelled like leather, coffee, and the wood polish they used on the long bar. At least 100 bikers filled the main room, their voices a low, worried rumble. Emma spotted her mom already there, sitting with Diane, who held baby Robbie tight against her chest. The baby wore tiny ear protection muffs over his ears to block the noise. He waved his small hands when he saw Emma, and something warm spread through her chest. She had risked everything for this little boy, and she would do it again in a heartbeat. Buck stood near the stage, talking with 3 men Emma didn't recognize. They wore regular clothes, not leather, and one had a badge clipped to his belt. A police officer. Emma's stomach tightened. "Emma's here," Diane called out, and Buck's head turned. He nodded to the men and walked over to Emma. His face looked tired and worried under his gray beard. "Glad you made it, kid," he said, putting a heavy hand on her shoulder. "We need to talk." Buck led Emma to a small room off the main hall. Inside were Diane with Robbie, Emma's mom, and two of the men Buck had been talking to. One was the police officer, and the other wore a suit with a tie that didn't quite match. "Emma, this is Officer Jenkins and Mr. Ramirez from the district attorney's office," Buck said. His voice was lower and more serious than Emma had ever heard it. "Hello, Emma," said Mr. Ramirez, the man in the suit. "I've heard a lot about what you did. That was very brave." Emma nodded, not sure what to say. Her mom reached out and took her hand, squeezing it tight. "Emma, honey," her mom said, "they need to tell you something important." Officer Jenkins stepped forward. "The man who tried to take Robbie? His name is Carl Weber. He was released on bail yesterday." Emma's chest felt cold. "I know. I heard at school." Mr. Ramirez sighed. "There's more. We have reason to believe Weber wasn't working alone. He's part of a larger group that—" He stopped, looking at Emma's mom as if asking permission to continue. "That takes children," Buck finished, his voice hard as stone. "A trafficking ring working in 3 states. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She looked at Robbie, now sleeping against Diane's shoulder. His tiny fingers curled around the edge of his blanket. She thought of what might have happened if that man had gotten away with him. "Why are you telling me this?" Emma asked, though deep inside, she already knew the answer. Officer Jenkins knelt down so he was at Emma's eye level. "Because you're the only one who saw his face clearly. You're our key witness in court next month." He paused, and the room felt too quiet. "And now they know who you are, too." The clubhouse fell silent as Buck outlined their plan. Emma would have round-the-clock protection from the Hells Angels. Someone would always be watching her house, her school, and anywhere else she went. They had already spoken with her school principal to explain the situation. "You mean everyone will know?" Emma asked, her voice small. "Better they know and help keep you safe than not know and miss something important," Buck said. His rough hand rested on her shoulder. "We protect our own, Emma. That's how it works." Emma nodded, but inside her stomach twisted like snakes. Just when kids had stopped whispering about her, just when she'd started to feel normal, everything would change again. But this time, it wasn't about patched clothes or free lunch tickets. This time, it was about dangerous people who wanted to hurt her. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. The rain had stopped, but wind rattled her window. In the street below, she could make out the shape of a motorcycle and its rider, keeping watch. The digital clock by her bed flashed 2:17 a.m. in red numbers. School was in 5 hours, but her mind wouldn't quiet down. Emma got up and took out her drawing book. She flipped through pages until she found the picture of her father. She had drawn it from memory a year after he died. His kind eyes and the way his smile tilted more on one side than the other. "I wish you were here, Dad," she whispered to the picture. "I'm scared." Emma's room was small, but it was hers. The blue walls were covered with her drawings. Her desk held colored pencils in a cup her father had made in his workshop. Her bed had the quilt her grandmother had made before she passed away. This room held everything that mattered to her. The thought of leaving it made her chest hurt. Morning came too quickly. Emma dressed in jeans and a sweater with her leather vest over top. At breakfast, her mom pushed eggs around her plate but barely ate. "You don't have to go to school today if you don't want to," her mom said, dark circles under her eyes showing she hadn't slept either. "Buck said normal routine is best," Emma replied, remembering his words from last night. "Plus, I have a math test." The ride to school was different. Instead of walking or taking the bus, Ray drove Emma in his truck, while two other Hell's Angels followed on motorcycles. Kids stared as Emma got out of the truck in the school parking lot. Ray's face was serious as he scanned the area. "I'll be right here at 3:15, he said. "Don't leave the building without me or one of our guys." Inside, whispers followed Emma down the hallway. Word had spread fast. Some kids looked scared, others curious. Emma kept her head high, the way Buck had shown her. "Never let them see you're afraid," he'd said, "even when you are." In first period, Emma's teacher, Mrs. Harris, pulled her aside. "The principal told us about your situation," she said quietly. "If you need anything, just ask." By lunch, it seemed the whole school knew. Emma sat at her usual table, but instead of the friendly chatter from the past few weeks, an awkward silence fell. Finally, Jason from her English class spoke up. "Is it true? Are you testifying against some kind of criminal gang?" Emma picked at her sandwich. "I can't talk about it," she said, remembering Buck's warning not to share details. Brittany slid onto the bench across from Emma. The girl who had once called her Trash Girl now looked at her with wide, nervous eyes. "My dad's a cop," Brittany said, her voice low. "He said these are really dangerous people, Emma. Like, really bad." Emma's appetite disappeared. She closed her lunchbox and got up to leave, but Brittany caught her arm. "Wait," she said. "I just wanted to say, I think you're brave, standing up to them." Emma didn't know what to say. A month ago, Brittany wouldn't even look at her except to make fun of her clothes. Now she was calling her brave. The rest of the day dragged on. In every class, Emma felt eyes on her. Some teachers were too nice. Others seemed afraid to call on her at all. By the time the final bell rang, her shoulders ached from tension. True to his word, Ray waited in the parking lot. His truck was running, heat blasting against the chilly afternoon. Two more bikers sat on their motorcycles nearby, scanning the area as Emma walked to the truck. "Everything okay at school?" Ray asked as Emma climbed in. "Fine," she lied, not wanting to talk about the whispers and stares. Instead of heading home, Ray drove toward the edge of town. "Where are we going?" Emma asked. "Buck wants to show you something," was all Ray said. They pulled up to a small house Emma had never seen before. It had white paint that was peeling in places and a small front porch with a rocking chair. Buck's motorcycle was parked out front. Inside, Buck sat at a kitchen table with Emma's mom. Papers were spread out between them. "What's going on?" Emma asked, dropping her backpack on the floor. Buck gestured to a chair. "Sit down, kid. We need to talk about what happens next." Emma's mom reached for her hand. "The police think it might be safer if we stayed somewhere else for a while, just until the trial is over." "You want us to leave our house?" Emma's voice cracked. "Leave school? Leave everything?" Buck slid a paper toward her. It was a court document with dates on it. "The trial is in 4 weeks. The DA is pushing to move it up. But until then, you're our star witness. The only one who can put Weber at the scene, trying to take Robbie." Emma stared at the document, not really seeing the words. All she could think about was her room, her drawings on the wall, the marks on her doorframe where her dad had measured her height every birthday until he died. The thought of leaving it all made her throat tight. "This house belongs to my cousin," Buck explained. "It's off the grid. No one would look for you here." Emma stood up suddenly. "No, I'm not running away. This is my home, my school, my life." She grabbed her backpack and headed for the door. "Emma, wait," her mom called. But Emma was already outside, gulping cold air. She couldn't leave. She wouldn't. Running away felt like letting the bad guys win before the fight even started. Buck followed her onto the porch. He didn't say anything at first, just stood beside her looking out at the bare trees. "I know what it's like to want to stand your ground," he finally said. "To not want to give up what's yours." Emma wiped at her eyes. "Then don't make me leave." Buck sighed, his breath making clouds in the cold air. Sometimes being brave means making hard choices. Inside, Emma's mom was crying softly. The sound made Emma's heart hurt worse than any bully's words ever had. That night, Emma and her mom stayed at their own house. Buck wasn't happy about it, but he respected Emma's choice. Instead, 6 Hell's Angels members took turns watching the house from outside. Their motorcycles rumbled up and down the street all night like metal guard dogs. 2 days later, strange things began happening around town. First, Officer Jenkins's police car was found with all 4 tires slashed. Then, the courthouse computer system crashed, losing files for several ongoing cases. Emma's school received a bomb threat that turned out to be fake, but still scared everyone. At lunch that day, Brittany slid next to Emma with news. "My dad said they found evidence at the old Wilson warehouse. He's on the police force. He's not supposed to tell anyone, but I thought you should know." Emma's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. The old Wilson warehouse had been empty for years. It sat at the edge of town, a huge metal building where they once made furniture before the company moved to China. "What kind of evidence?" Emma whispered. Brittany leaned closer. "Papers, phones, stuff about kids from all over. My dad says it's bigger than anyone thought." That evening, Emma told Buck about the warehouse. His face turned hard as stone as he made phone calls. 3 hours later, police cars with flashing lights surrounded the warehouse. Emma watched it on the local news with her mom, Buck, and Diane with baby Robbie. The next morning, the whole town buzzed with shock. 3 men had been arrested at the warehouse. One was the high school principal's brother. Another owned the fancy restaurant downtown. But the third man made Emma's blood turn cold. It was Mr. Wilson himself, who still owned the warehouse and whose son went to Emma's school. "They look so normal," Emma's mom said, staring at their pictures in the newspaper. "How could no one know what they were doing?" "People see what they expect to see," Buck answered. "That's why they got away with it for so long." At school, 5 students were missing, including Blake Wilson. Teachers said their families had suddenly left town. Kids whispered that their parents were part of the trafficking ring too. Emma walked the hallways, feeling eyes on her back, not knowing which stares came from fear and which from hatred. Some kids whose parents were friends with the arrested men wouldn't look at her at all. Emma's art teacher, Ms. Patton, pulled her aside after class. "Are you doing okay? This must be hard for you." Emma nodded, not trusting her voice. Ms. Patton was the only teacher who had encouraged Emma's drawing after her dad died. "Your latest pictures have so much emotion in them," Ms. Patton continued, showing Emma her recent assignment. It was a drawing of the town from above, with shadows stretching across it like dark fingers. "You're capturing something important here." That Friday, Emma babysat Joey next door while Ms. Carter worked the night shift at the hospital. Joey was almost 1 year old now and could pull himself up to stand. Emma drew pictures of him in her book as he played with colorful blocks on the floor. "You're getting so big." "Joey?" Emma said, tickling his round belly. He giggled, his baby laugh filling the quiet house. At 9:37 p.m., Emma heard a sound that made her freeze. Glass breaking downstairs. Someone was in the house. With shaking hands, she picked up Joey and ran to the bathroom. It was the smallest room with only one door and a tiny window. She locked the door, turned off the light, and called Buck's number. Joey started to fuss, confused by Emma's fear. "Shh, it's okay," she whispered, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. "We need to be very quiet now." Heavy footsteps moved through the house below. Then the terrible sound of boots on the stairs. "Buck, someone's in Miss Carter's house," Emma whispered into the phone. "I'm in the upstairs bathroom with Joey." "We're 3 minutes out." Buck's voice came through, tight with worry. "Stay hidden." The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. Emma sat in the dark, one hand over Joey's mouth to keep him quiet, the other holding her phone. The bathroom door handle jiggled. Joey squirmed against her hand. "I know you're in there, Emma Walker," a man's voice called. It wasn't a voice she recognized. "Open the door. We just want to talk." Emma didn't answer. Her whole body trembled. "Your testimony can put away some important people," the voice continued. "People with families, kids of their own. Is that what you want? To separate families?" The door handle rattled harder. Joey whimpered against Emma's palm. "You have 5 seconds to open this door before I break it down," the man growled. Emma looked desperately around the dark bathroom. The only window was too small for her to fit through. Maybe she could push Joey out to safety. But then what? 5, 4, 3. Then came another sound. Motorcycles, dozens of them, roaring down the street. The man at the door cursed. His footsteps moved quickly away from the bathroom door and pounded down the stairs. Blue and red police lights flashed through the small window. The sound of motorcycles filled the night. A crash downstairs. Men shouting. Joey began to cry in earnest now, his little body shaking against Emma's chest. 10 minutes later, Buck's voice came from the other side of the bathroom door. "Emma, it's me. You can come out now." Emma unlocked the door with trembling hands. Buck stood there with Officer Jenkins and Ray. Their faces were grim. "Did you catch him?" Emma asked. Joey still clutched to her chest. Buck shook his head. "He got out the back door. But we know who it is now." He showed Emma a picture on his phone. "Recognize him?" Emma gasped. It was the assistant coach from her school, the man who had smiled at her just yesterday in the hallway. That night, after Ms. Carter came home to a house full of police and bikers, Buck drove Emma and her mom to the safe house. This time, Emma didn't argue. The men had found her at someone else's house. They knew where she went. No place felt safe anymore. As they packed bags in their living room, Emma carefully took down her favorite drawings from her bedroom wall. Her dad's face, the town from above with its dark shadows, baby Robbie sleeping. "We'll be back," her mom promised, seeing Emma's sad face. "This is just for a little while." But as Emma looked around her room one last time, she wasn't so sure. The bad men had found her once. They would try again. The truth hit her like cold water. This wasn't just about her anymore. Joey could have been hurt. Ms. Carter could have come home to something terrible. The whole town was caught in a fight that started with one brave choice in a corner store. The safe house became Emma's new home for 3 weeks. It was small but clean, with a yard surrounded by tall trees. 2 Hells Angels stood guard outside at all times. Others patrolled the road leading to the house, their motorcycles rumbling day and night like a storm that never ended. At first, Emma felt like a prisoner. She missed school, her own bed, even the familiar sound of the neighbor's dog barking at night. The walls of her temporary bedroom remained blank. She couldn't bring herself to hang her drawings here. It wasn't home. Then one night, Buck arrived with a surprise. "Thought you might want this," he said, placing a large box on the kitchen table. Emma opened it to find a camera, not a cheap one, but a professional model with multiple lenses. Her eyes widened as she lifted it from the box. "Time to make those drawings of yours into something they can't ignore," Buck said. "We're going to show the whole town what's happening, through your eyes." The next day, Buck took Emma on his motorcycle to see what had become of their town. They stayed hidden, watching from a distance as Emma clicked photo after photo. She captured the empty Wilson warehouse with police tape across its doors. She photographed the courthouse where men in suits rushed in and out with worried faces. She took pictures of the clubhouse, now overflowing with Hell's Angels from 3 states who had come to stand with their brothers. Ms. Patton, Emma's art teacher, visited the safe house to help her learn how to use the camera properly. Together, they created a plan. "People need to see the truth," Ms. Patton said, "not just about the bad men, but about who's really protecting this town." For the next week, Emma's photos began appearing everywhere, first on social media, then in the local newspaper, and finally on a big poster board outside the courthouse. The pictures told a story. Tough bikers in leather guarding a school crossing, Diane nursing baby Robbie while a protective circle of Hell's Angels stood nearby, Officer Jenkins shaking hands with Buck as they shared information. But the most powerful photo showed Emma herself, standing tall in her protected friend vest. Her face serious but unafraid. Beneath it was the simple caption, "I will tell the truth." The day of the trial arrived on a clear morning in early spring. Emma wore her nicest clothes, a blue dress borrowed from Brittany, who had become a real friend during the weeks of hiding. Emma's leather vest hung over the back of her chair in the courtroom. Her mom sat right behind her, holding her hand until it was time. When they called Emma to the stand, the courtroom fell silent. She walked forward, her legs shaking, but her head high. The judge smiled kindly at her as she swore to tell the truth. Then came the questions. "Can you identify the man who attempted to kidnap baby Robbie Carter at Mike's Market 3 months ago?" the prosecutor asked. Emma pointed to Carl Weber, who sat with his head down at the defense table. "That's him." One by one, Emma answered every question clearly and honestly. She described how the man had tried to take Robbie, how she had protected him until help came. When asked if she was afraid, Emma looked straight at the jury. "Yes, I was scared," she said, "but being afraid doesn't mean you can't also be brave." The trial lasted 3 days. Evidence from the warehouse connected Weber to 11 other men, including those who had already fled town. The jury took only 2 hours to find him guilty. When the verdict was read, Buck squeezed Emma's shoulder with his big hand. It was over. 6 months later, Emma sat on the steps of the courthouse again, but this time with her camera in hand and her leather vest proudly displayed. The trafficking ring had been completely dismantled. With 13 arrests across 3 states and children rescued from terrible situations. The evidence Emma had helped gather through her photography had made the truth impossible to ignore or hide. Inside her camera bag was her acceptance letter to an art school in the city, a scholarship arranged by an anonymous donor, though the Hell's Angels patches decorating the envelope had given away the secret. The program would start next fall, giving her time to finish her last year of high school. Her photos of the case had been purchased by a national magazine, bringing in more money than her family had seen in years. Diane sat beside her, baby Robbie now walking with unsteady steps across the courthouse lawn. His chubby legs wobbled as he chased a butterfly. "He'll never remember what almost happened," Diane said, watching her son play. "But someday, I'll tell him about the girl who saved him." Emma clicked her camera, capturing Robbie's laugh in the sunshine. She had taken hundreds of photos in the past months, but the ones of Robbie were her favorites. They reminded her why everything had been worth it. That evening, a celebration filled the Hells Angels clubhouse. Members from 3 states had returned for the occasion, their motorcycles lined up for a quarter-mile down the road. Emma's mom was talking to Diane about moving to an apartment closer to the diner where she worked, one with better heating and no leaky roof. Buck called for quiet, his deep voice cutting through the noise. When the room settled, he walked to Emma with something in his hands. "6 months ago, this young lady became a protected friend of our club," Buck announced. "Today, she becomes something more." He presented Emma with a new patch for her vest. Below "protected friend" were new words: "family forever." As hundreds of bikers cheered, Emma realized she had found something she never expected. Not just protection, but belonging. Later, as the party continued inside, Emma stepped out to the parking lot. Buck had been teaching her to ride a small motorcycle safely. She sat on it now, feeling the cool metal beneath her and imagining the freedom of the open road. From her vest pocket, Emma pulled out her old drawing book. She flipped to a sketch she'd made years ago after her father died. A girl standing alone in the rain. Next to it, she placed her newest photograph. The same girl surrounded by leather-clad protectors, her head held high. The sunset painted the sky orange and purple as Emma started the motorcycle's engine. The rumble vibrated through her body like a promise. Emma Walker had once been invisible, a girl hiding behind her hair. Now she saw everything around her clearly, and more importantly, she was seen. Really seen, and she was never going to hide again.